I'm really happy to be doing this. So, let's say the typical scenario is that you start on Monday morning with a list of 10 clients, and you're working your way through it. You find yourself saying, well, no sense in calling them today. I know they don't have the money, and whatever follows that. His kids, her kids need braces. He's getting a divorce. Her mother's sick. They're downsizing. And before you know it, you've just talked yourself down to 6 prospects, and you haven't even picked up the phone or sent an email. This kind of talking your way out of prospecting is a real trap, and it particularly comes with people who convert their clients to friends because they often see them outside of business. So if this scenario is familiar, it's a sign that seeing clients outside of business is stopping you from getting the business. And it's a real challenge to salespeople because it can impede rather than move the sales process along. And really, when we talk about managing the sale, we talk about moving the sale process along, and that's really a major part of what an ad rep's job is. And seeing clients outside of business, casual contact, is often a trap based on false friendships that can prevent good salespeople from getting the business. And converting clients to friends because you see them at church or your kids' soccer games isn't just limited to small circulation magazines. It happens everywhere. And when it does, as a consultant, it often tells me that the salesperson lacks the confidence in himself or in the magazine to present it as a valid advertising vehicle that will actually help the advertiser. So my experience tells me that sales rep who knows the difference between selling to prospects and selling to, quote, friends, sell more advertising than those who don't. So we're really going to talk about this. And yet I see salespeople who think talking to a prospect at their kid's baseball practice or dropping in for a coffee and chatting about how the holidays were is not the same as pitching to them. And that's a lost opportunity because when they do this, they fail the value of the magazine to the client. And that means they have a hard time staying on rate card, closing properly, and developing effective value-added packages and establishing good, long-term, professional, mutually beneficial relationships with their clients. All right? So when you start selling to clients outside of business, and we talk about impeding the sales process, what that means is not just that list of that typical scenario, but it means that you start to substitute casual conversations for sales calls. And again, I mentioned the coffee. If you have a sales manager, you have a publisher, and often small magazines don't. So it's really up to you to really monitor yourself. But in a larger magazine, if my sales manager said to me, "Did you talk to Sylvia?" "Yeah, we had a coffee the other day." That's not selling. It's chatting. It's talking. That's not building a relationship professionally as in moving the sale along. Or you start to do the client's thinking for them, and that's exactly what that typical scenario a few slides back was describing. You decided they couldn't advertise. You decided they didn't have the money. And they may have mentioned that to you in passing. "Oh, my God, my kid's going to school, and next year I've got to send him to a private school, and it's killing me. I just don't have any money." And you read that as not having money for advertising. So you stop presenting advertising to them. And you stop updating them on what's new at a magazine. All right? So in short, you stop selling. So when you do that, you do the client a disservice because you do represent a valid advertising vehicle that can help them reach their marketing goals. And you do have many options to help them. Digital options, inserts, outserts, polybagging, sampling at trade shows that can help them reach their marketing goals. And you have many price points, various sizes, fractionals, classified ads, and print banner ads, skyscrapers and digital that can help them reach their marketing goals. And you do yourself a disservice by not getting the sale. So let's go back. An advertiser will spend money on something they believe they will work. Your task is to show them how your magazine will work for them. And as I say here, a sales rep's job is to show advertisers why their magazine is the one they should spend their money with. It's also a sales rep's job, again, to manage the sales process and lead it to a sale. It is not being an order taker. Managing the sale means being involved in all aspects of it and moving it along to its conclusion. So how do you do this? The first way to do it is by avoiding the selling to friends trap, by keeping business conversations out of your friendships and friendships out of your business. Okay? So let's start with building relationships with clients. There is a big difference between being a friend and being friendly. I'm very friendly, I know. And yet it's not my job to listen to people's problems, to listen to issues they may have, and it's not my place in a business scenario to talk about my own. So I could tell you that over the years, my clients that I've dealt with know very little about me, and that's the way it ought to be. And I too work even though I work in Toronto, my sales circle is small because I'm working on magazines. I see these people at trade shows, I see them at events, and I see them at some professional events as well. And I too see some of them at church and at my son's hockey team. So it takes, your job is to keep that conversation on the rails and not let it slip away to, oh my God, I just hate my sister-in-law. She's coming for dinner on Christmas. It's just going to be horrible. You're not there to discuss that. You're not there to help that. You're there to say, that sounds like you're in a real pickle. You know, though, what I really dropped by to talk about was advertising and garden making. All right? And don't confuse being social with doing your job. Helping somebody try by being an amateur psychologist. Your sister-in-law doesn't sound so bad. You know, maybe you ought to give her a task and let her make the gravy. You know, I did that, and it really helped my relationship. That's not what they're coming to you for. They may want to vent, but that's not really what this relationship is about. Clients value salespeople who deal with them professionally and help them meet their sales goals. So, if you are at a hockey rink, if you are at a baseball practice, hey, how's it going? It's going great. How's it going with you? Hey, I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about advertising. That's great. Why don't we set up a time to talk next week? What's a good time for you? We'll schedule a phone call. And by the way, one of the big tips I have for salespeople now is scheduling a phone call. Saying you'll call me tomorrow or call me next week or call me sometime doesn't get the same result. If I say, sure, let's call tomorrow, what time do you have? 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock? What suits you better? All right? When you're in an office setting, or at least not in a social one. People, again, don't pick up the phone enough anymore. They tend to use a lot of email. And so scheduling a phone conversation can often be really useful. So building relationships with clients, this will allow you to show prospects the value of advertising your magazine to them, and it will gain you their respect as a professional over time. So, all right, that's fine. We can kind of get those relationships recalibrated and back on track, and you now know why you oughtn't to drift into the friendship trap. But what are you really selling? And what's really going on? And as I said, sometimes it's a lack of experience or a lack of confidence that makes salespeople go to this default of thinking they're building a professional relationship when they're trying to say, hey, how are you? Let's get together. So let's go back to this. The value of advertising in your magazine is What makes it special, unique, and different? And we're not, not just your magazine, but your brand. We're talking about online as well. It's your editorial voice. No two magazines are alike. What your magazine does is different from everybody else's, and particularly if there are one or two competitors in your market, you really have to tell me the difference between them. Why should I advertise in one over the other? You need to tell me what makes you special, unique, and different is your readership, the audience you deliver, and how you deliver it. Are you paid? Are you controlled? Are you delivered by Canada Post? Is it a private outfit you have delivering the magazine? Physical aspects of the magazine, the layout, the stock production values, and more. Is it perfect bound? Is it saddle stitched? Does it have heavyweight stock, lightweight stock? Does photography? I work for a gardening magazine. The photography and quality of the paper is critical. That might be less so on a magazine that sells used cars. So those things are considerations that make you stand out, that make you special, unique, and different. And then what else do you have? What offerings? Online, digital, off-page, events, trade shows. What do you have that you can offer them? So you don't rely on your friend to tell you what's going on with their business. As I said earlier, just saying, yeah, we'll catch up, and then it doesn't happen, or what's going on? Well, we're pulling back this year. Oh, okay. That's not a sales call. That's not a sales conversation. You have to keep track of your client's business as much as you can. Keep track of their websites, their sales literature. Look around, read the paper if they show up in the paper, local papers. Find out if there's a fit between what they're advertising and your magazine. If it's fur coats, I don't want it in garden making. Find out if the client advertises in magazines still. And you may know them already. And you say, oh yeah, I see him all the time in the Metro Guide. I see him all the time in BC Business. But really, are there other places they're advertising? If you think you're on top of it, maybe that's a sign that you may need to, don't make that assumption, and you need to get on top of it. And then when you do find out where they advertise, how do you compare to them? Going back to editorial voice, readership, circulation information, production qualities, your online offerings. How do you compare? So I want to go now to, once you've done that homework, contacting the client and keeping it professional. So, do you sell in person, over the phone, through mail and materials, or email? How do they like to be reached? You're likely going to be doing some combination of all of these, but clients will let you know the best way to communicate with them. I don't use the phone much, I'm too busy. I don't use email much, I prefer to just pick up the phone. It's better if you drop in and see me. Don't ever drop in, I'm so busy. Again, coming back to Garden Making Magazine, those businesses are nurseries and they're outdoors. It is very hard for me to reach a lot of my clients in the daytime, especially in long days. When it's darker earlier now, they come inside, and clearly we are moving into winter. But in the long days, hot days, I won't get an answer to an email, and I will not reach them by phone unless I call them at 7 in the morning, and I wouldn't want to take that chance. So you have to learn what works best to get what you want, which is moving the sale along. You have to know their preferences, and as I just said, are they partial to email, phone calls, drop-offs, pop-ins? Is there a time of day or of the week that's best for reaching them? Do they like to schmooze, all right, a little bit of chatting, or do they want to cut to the chase? And this is important because is it you? You really have to determine, is it you that likes to schmooze, or is it you that cuts to the chase? You really have to listen to what your client wants and adapt to them. And this last point, do they respond to authority? There might be someone else above them or around them where if you're not getting a response, you should copy them. Or if the emails are drifting, again, into into too friendly territory. Here's a joke, here's a funny. Get out of that by starting to copy someone else on the emails and get them back on track so you maintain that professional tone. You have to know your client's advertising objectives. Why are they advertising? To move inventory, to create awareness, or image building, right? But importantly, you can learn that. But more importantly, what are your advertising objectives for the client? What do you want from them? What do you see in your investigation of them, of where they're advertising now, of what they're doing? What do you know that they can do? You see how much money they spend in your competition or they spend in other places. You can get the media kits for the cost of pages and advertising and other vehicles, and even discounted. You have an idea of how much they're paying. So what's your objective? Before you contact them even, you know what you want. Do you want to sell a campaign? 6 ads, 8 ads, 3 ads? Do you want to sell a print and online campaign? Or are you upselling what they already have in the competition? They've only got a third of a page. I want them to buy a page in mine. I know they can afford it. So you need to have your objectives very clear. And you have to remember that selling starts with listening. So coming back to being trapped into problem solving, that's not listening. Again, that's psychological, friendly, helping with the turkey dinner and the sister-in-law. Right? This is listening, and listening starts with questioning. So we have what we call the interview technique. And this is when you really do talk to someone about advertising. You say, you know, I know all about Garden Making magazine, but I don't know much about bulbs. So why don't I ask you a few questions? I want to ask them who they want to reach. Where they're advertising now. What do they look for when choosing advertising? What do they like about where they are now? Who's their competition? What makes their business special, unique, and different from their competition? All right? And who is your competition? That's down there twice. That's just a mistake. My apologies. But you need that information. And again, if you're assuming it, but haven't really asked them and don't really know it, you need to take the time to go back and reestablish that relationship on a professional basis and get these answers. When you're doing this, don't interrupt. Your job is to listen. You have to find out what your customers are thinking. So don't finish their sentences, interrupt, or assume you know what they're going to say. This is the classic. You know, I always find garden making to be an expensive matter. I know what they're thinking, but we ought to have other options. You don't know what they're thinking. Let them finish. Now we're going to talk about starting to build the fit. And I think what's important here is to pause for a moment from this presentation, because I want to really get to tell you what you're really selling. And you're really, it's not a third of a page or a half a page or an outside back cover. What you're really selling is access to readers in an editorial environment they trust. And this concept unites the 3 pillars of publishing, which are editorial, circulation, and advertising. And it's important that you understand how magazines work, particularly print, at a time when we're hearing it's all online and nobody wants print anymore. As an interesting anecdote, 2 years ago, I had 2 clients cancel telling me they were going only with online. They didn't want anything to do with print. They're now back saying we need them both. And we can talk about why that is later. But now, selling access to readers in an editorial environment you trust, means that readers trust the editorial of a magazine that they like. And you know this yourselves, that there are magazines that you like and you read, whether it's Vanity Fair every month or Reader's Digest or Maclean's. You rely on it to keep you informed. You rely on it. You like its editorial voice. You like the way things are presented. You like the information. Fashion magazines keep you up to date on trends in makeup and in clothing. whereas the Atlantic keeps you up to date on thought, on a critical assessment of an event rather than just reporting on it. And when you have a magazine that you like and you trust it, you make time to read it. I'm going to have a glass of wine tonight and sit down and watch this, or read this while my husband's watching the hockey game, or I'm going to read it in bed on Sunday morning with a coffee. I'm going to read it on the dock. I'm going to wait till the kids are gone to school. I'm just going to sit down and catch up with this. You make time for it. And when you do that, your mind is open, you shut everything else out, and you're just totally focused. And that's really the gift of print, and it's what print continues to do. I can fry an egg with my iPad in front of me, with the radio on, with the TV on, but I can't read a magazine and cook dinner. So coming back to building the fit, we're going to talk about features and benefits, and we say that it's not about your grass seed, it's about their lawn. And this is one of the essential building blocks to any advertising pitch is features and benefits. So it works like this. I have a new lawn seed that's genetically engineered to need less water. It needs less sunlight, far less fertilizer, and it's light, easier to distribute. And in 2 weeks, you will have a beautiful lawn. The features of it: lightweight, needs less light, needs less water. Those are great. But that's not the selling point. The benefit to you is you will have a lawn that is the envy of the neighborhood. It's not about my grass seed, it's about your lawn. You know, Dale Carnegie said that he loved strawberries and cream, but he realized early on that fish don't. And if you want to catch a fish, they like worms. So you have to make sure that it's about what they want. So when we talk about building the fit, and this again, this is to talk about building how you're going to sell. You're going to start using the research you've done to find out about your client and what they've given you, and to show how your magazine is a perfect advertising vehicle for them. How are you going to fit in there? Selling campaigns based on readership is key, and this means not selling on specific editorial. This is a classic tip that a lot of sales people fall out of the habit of selling. They start selling one-shots. So when you call somebody, I'm working on the spring issue of Garden Making. Would you like to buy an ad? An ad, one time. And that means that you are selling that same client every issue. Whereas, if you sell a campaign based on frequency and on readership, you're selling 3 or 4 ads at a time, and it makes you more efficient. When we say sell on readership, we mean this. I have an advertiser who's a pesticide company, and he'll say to me, I'm not advertising in Garden Making until you have pesticide editorial. Okay, so if you've had any experience with this, you go back to the editor and say, we have a pesticide editorial, we'll get the ad. Sure enough, you get pesticide editorial, and the advertiser says, I don't need to be in there now, you've just given me editorial. So, and it doesn't work anyway. One ad, one time doesn't work. You need to sell on readership because you're selling access to your readers. So the answer to the pesticide advertiser is, I understand, but you need to be in every issue. You need to be where the buying decision is made. And we know our readers are avid, passionate gardeners. And when they find aphids on their roses, they're going to want pesticides, and they're going to remember what they saw in our magazine because they trust it. Access to readers in an editorial environment they trust. So it really doesn't matter what the specific editorial is, whether it's on pesticides or begonias or bulbs or roses or hardscaping. Our readers read every issue. They love it, particularly our subscribers. They pay in advance for it, so they trust it. You need to be there in every issue when the buying decision is made. So you need to sell campaigns based on readership. It's time efficient. It lets you lay out future ads and project them and it lets you offer better placement and helps you avoid late ads. Closing. This is always one of those big issues with salespeople. You've built the fit, you've shown the value of advertising in your magazine, and closing the sale is the next logical step. But there's something about it. It's just, you just have a hard time saying it. And what do you say? Closing is not thinking, feeling, or wondering. Do you think you might want to advertise in my magazine? So, how about it? Do you feel like you want to advertise? I'm just wondering if maybe you'd like to advertise in my magazine. Wishy-washy questions will get you wishy-washy answers. Well, I don't know. I have to consider it. Well, I'm going to have to talk to somebody else about it. I'm going to have to think about what you've told me. All right? The way to close is this. I recommend we begin your campaign in our June issue with a half-page 4-color advertisement. You'll either get the business or you'll get objections. But the word that's important here is recommend. All right? Because you're managing this whole process. You can close anytime. And I read a lot of literature and hear people speak where they say, oh, when they touch the magazine they're interested in. When their hand goes to their chin, that's the time to close. There's no real bad time because you'll either get no or you'll get objections. And by the way, there is no in advertising sales. Even if you get a no, I don't have the money, that means I don't have the money now. And things change rapidly with advertisers. And that's why you can't start with 10 and decide they don't, 4 of them don't have the money. You don't know that. So there is no. You're going to go back to them depending on the frequency of your magazine, quarterly, at least quarterly, probably more. You've always got something to go back to them with, something new we're trying, something new we're doing, something I read in the paper that will help you, something that we're offering, something somebody else has done. That's your job, is managing this sales process. But back to objections. A client will not buy until they're sure they're making the right decision. And remember that an objection is not a no. It tells you where in the sales process you failed to sell the client. All right? They're helpers. They're not a no. You have to see them for what they are. They are requests for information, and they give you another opportunity to sell. And they're often relationship builders because you could go back to the client with something. The two keys are acknowledge an objection, but don't agree. And the key word there is I understand. So, when you get requests for information, it's like this. I recommend we begin a campaign in our June issue with 4 issues, with 4 half-page advertisements. I just don't think you're reaching the right market. That's a request for more circulation. That means you failed to show them the value of your circulation. I don't know it's the right editorial fit. That means you failed to show them how it is the perfect editorial fit. I don't have the money right now. We're not spending any money. We don't have the budget. Anything around money means you haven't shown them the value of it, why it's worth so much. Why is it worth so much? Because your readers love it, because they like it, because coming back to what makes it special, unique, and different, the quality of it, the paper stock, whether it's perfect bound or saddle stitched. All right? I understand. Let me show you why it is the right editorial fit. I understand. Let me show you why we do reach your target market. I understand. Let me show you why our readership is your target audience. Saying I understand, you're acknowledging them, but you're not agreeing. And that's a very, very important distinction, because you don't want to get confrontational and you don't want to get trapped yourself into something. Gee, yeah, you're right, our circulation really isn't that big, but we're getting better at it, and we're trying really hard, and we hope it will get bigger over the years. And I mean, we're just 3 years old. You don't want to get defensive. I understand. Let me show you why our circulation is. Or let me get back to you with some better data, or some data. All right? So I want you to think about what we've talked about, and I'm hoping there are questions, and I want you to think about when you stop selling. This is kind of a self-diagnostic. So when do you stop selling? When prospects say they love the magazine? I love the magazine. As soon as I get money, I'm going to advertise in it. So when you come to his name on the list, I don't have to worry about him. As soon as he has the money, he'll advertise. Yeah, 3 years later, he still isn't advertising. You stop selling him. When you decide they don't have the money in that typical scenario. When you spend more time catching up with clients than selling to them and moving the sale along. When they don't return your calls and blow you off. When you buy the prospect's excuses for not buying advertising instead of them buying the ad. When you describe the magazine instead of selling its unique aspects. This is a classic rep mistake. Hi, it's Gwen. I'm here. I want to talk about Garden Making Magazine. I really love this magazine. It's so beautiful. And if you just look at it, it's got flowers in it, and there are pictures of all kinds of things. People love it, and you're not selling. You're blathering on, but that's just filler. Finally, what makes a good sales rep? It's not being a good friend. It's selling space is a profession, and the goal is to be professional in that profession. It means being honest, dependable, and businesslike in your relationships with others. And I leave you with my top 10 sales tips. And we can go over these, or we can head on to questions now. It's just a slide for you to have. And I wanted to say with this presentation, if you want it, it's available to you. Just let, I believe, Sylvia know, and we'll get it out to you. So it's a good reference tool to go back to and help you, I hope, sell better. There are ways for you to get readership data on those through a readership survey, through SurveyMonkey, and just asking your readers. Sean, I don't know what kind of access or interaction you may have with readers. Do you see them at trade shows? And it depends on what kind of controlled circulation you mean. Is it a business-to-business magazine? Is it an association magazine? But you do need to get some readership information. The basic information, I'm just going through something like when garden making was new and it's consumer. We went to StatsCan and got information on gardeners. We went to Landscape Ontario and got information on gardeners in Ontario. So you may have to use that kind of general information depending on what the nature of the magazine is to get something to use. There are a number of small magazines in Canada, small circulation magazines that are doing very well. I think the 25,000 mark is a bit of a smokescreen and one of those objections I was talking about earlier where, okay, then let me show you what I can do as a 10,000 circ magazine, as a 15,000 circ magazine. And generally that means being more creative, being more nimble, having different kind of offerings. Every once in a while, someone gives me that. We only advertise in magazines with a readership of over 250,000. Mm-hmm. Well, my magazine meets your market. That's why I'm here. So I think you might have to work with that. I had to say, you know what? This is just for my family and my personal community, and it really isn't good for us to relate that way. I'm just not open to that. And that is true. I've got my mother-in-law, my stepmother on that, and my sister, and it's just not really the place for it. I discourage it that way. It's hugely helpful. Hugely helpful. I sell tweets. What doesn't show up in my bio is I'm a perfume blogger, and I have my own website. That's the only monetized blog in North America. The last time I checked, which was about 2 weeks ago, somebody might jump up and say, "Oh no, I know of one." And I talk about perfumes, and then I give you the chance to buy the one I'm talking about by selling you a decant. What I do on that is I sell tweets. And I'll say, "You want me to talk about your perfume?" I'll say, "New release by Serge Lutens." I tweet it, and I put a link to his website. And those sorts of things, you're going to see much, much more of that. Much, much more of that. Social media is huge now for advertising. It's one of the gripes of these communities is that it used to be just for your mom, your sister, your stepmother, and your cousins to all get together and talk about who's bringing what at Christmas. Yeah, it's huge, and it's now part of the mix. A target audience is a gem, and again, coming back to the 25,000 search, show me why your audience is targeted. Show me why they're valuable. Show me what you can do for me. So that is the deal. That's your circulation. Access to readers in an editorial environment they trust. We don't go to 50,000 gardeners. We go to 20,000 avid, passionate gardeners, not just weekend gardeners. These people see themselves as the sentinels of the earth. They're guardians of the earth. They're targeted. They read every page of the magazine, and they read everything they can get their hands on. So that's how your targeted audience is more valuable. And we can say that, in the old days, or as an example, if McLean's put Justin Bieber on the cover, they'd sell 2 million more copies easily, but they'd be selling them to young girls who can't buy the products in the magazine. So it's an inflated circulation that isn't targeted. Your targeted circulation is a gift. Newspapers are best, even weekly newspapers are best used for sales and acting now because they're immediate. Magazines tend to build business over time, so they're much better for image and for lasting longer. Because no matter what size a magazine is, what you're selling is access to readers in an editorial environment they trust, and you're going to have to sell. You're going to have to sell why you can do this better than anybody else. Small circulation magazines are much more nimble, and they're much more effective. I was in Magazines Canada last week. It was November, and I saw the January issue, Canadian Living. They print so far in advance, it's harder for them to really respond to market in print, but that's something smaller magazines can do, just being more nimble. Do you have a story? Do you know your targeted audience? Can you work with them to develop great online packages or testing or contests? I'm working with a client in garden making now, and they're putting together a package for their retailers using our advertising and a contest and some online offerings, including embedded videos. So you know what? You can attract them. National advertisers working through ad agencies are always a challenge because they're so numbers driven. They just look at PMB. But if you can get your story in front of them and keep at them with a good story about how great your magazine is, okay, all magazines are great, but how targeted they are, what makes you special, unique, and different, why they should be there, what they're missing by not being there, that's the key to it. Well, I'll tell you right now, no print is sold without an online component anymore. It's just a fact. Magazines that don't have robust online offerings are going to be more challenged. And by that I mean enough numbers to have a newsletter, to have a monthly newsletter. I mean, garden making, we have a quarterly newsletter, a monthly newsletter, and a weekly newsletter. Would you like me to supersize that for you? We will not compromise editorial and print by giving advertisers access to that editorial, like product mentions. But we will do it online in our blogger, and that's something else that you can consider to sell with. But no, it is offered now. Packaging is really what's effective. Offering tweets, offering likes, or offering, as I said, we do trade shows with garden making. I sell for other magazines as well, but garden making just is the easiest one to refer to. But packaging really, really is key now. And it helps you get full price for your print by letting you come down on other things that perhaps aren't as, don't cost you as much to produce, like a web blog. Niche magazines are doing terrifically now because people, broad-based consumer magazines, it's like, to me, buying a cookbook and you're a vegetarian, you just take all the meat recipes out of it. Why don't I just buy a vegetarian cookbook? Niche magazines are strong. They require you to know your story and to sell it, to know your target audience, to match that audience with your advertiser. Now, the challenge with niche magazines is you have a smaller pool to choose from when you're selling. In other words, I sell for CPA magazine, Chartered Professional Accountants, and you know what? With garden making, I could have a few hundred potential clients. With that magazine, I don't have as many. It's an association controlled circulation magazine. So I have to keep it tight. I have to make sure I'm on target. I have to work my client list. I have to keep them updated constantly because there's a lot of competition in my field. So that's a real challenge, but it can be done. But it just requires, with niche publications, that you know what you're selling and be very clear and stay on it and keep selling. This is always a sticky one. Ad agencies are so number-driven. You'll have to find them the way I find them. There used to be the national list of advertisers, but I find the easiest thing to do is call the advertiser, call the client that you want, and if it's President's Choice Food Products or Ford, and get them to tell you, I'd like to talk to you about advertising, who should I speak to? Oh, we have an agency. It's Sylvia Skene at ABC Agency. Thank you so much. Do you have contact information for her? And start talking to Sylvia. That's the best way to get it. The key to getting small niche magazines represented at ad agencies is to go to them with good packages. Ad agencies are numbers driven. They're particularly numbers driven by PMB and circulation information data. But you know something, if you get that, put a good package together and you don't get a response to one or two of them, you do have the right to say, excuse me, Sylvia, I've been working with you in good faith. I've come to you with good packages that would benefit the client. If you don't call me by Friday at 5, I will go directly to the client with this. It's about being polite, but it's about letting them know that you are working in good faith. Because the thing is, if you're a small magazine, they also make their money on commission, and if your page rate is $800, they ain't gonna they're gonna get out of bed for that unless you can give them a convincing story, which means selling them something that their client would really benefit from. That really will get a response. Otherwise, I would not go to the client directly, but I would work with the agency. It comes back to just, comes back to, you've got something, they want it, you can help them meet their marketing objectives. So then, what are those things? If you're sitting around a room brainstorming and you say, hey, how come why don't we get TD Banks? Good idea, call them. If it's a good idea, why is it a good idea? And start with that. Because you have a strong target audience. Because you have strong editorial. Because it's good editorial fit. Because you'll represent the advertiser in your magazine with what they're looking for. All right? And you know one of the tests to see if an ad fits in your magazine? Tear it out of another magazine and stick it in yours and thumb through it. And if it looks like it fits there, I'd move forward and say, yow. No, it's not us. Then I wouldn't worry about it. But you've got to have a strong story. Whatever your story is, this is our circulation. This is who we reach. This is how we reach them, your circulation. And this is a package we reach them. Strong editorial, engaging photography, award-winning writers. It's saddle stitched, so it'll be kept and referred to. It can be used in the garden. People can fold it over. It's perfect balance, so it can be archived. What are the things that make your magazine special, unique, and different? That's really what you're selling. And thank you all.